So welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. My name is David Carnes, and today we're going to be talking about sales reporting in Salesforce. So glad you could join us. We have Kyle Shagnon, as always, an amazing host helping us out. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, so today we'll do a quick introduction. We'll dive right into some Waza, some techniques. I'll show you some stuff in Salesforce. We'll talk about some upcoming OpFocus events and some training. We'll talk about the upcoming dojo topics, so hope you can join us again. And we'll do some Q&A. During the session, Kyle and I will keep an eye on the chat. If there are things that you're curious about, or maybe you want to come off mute to talk about something, we could work that out. All right, so who am I? My name is David Carnes. As I said, I'm the chairman and chief evangelist of OpFocus. I've been honored to be part of the Salesforce MVP program this past year. I am buying a lot of cookbooks, so I don't know if I have to throw that out there to the universe. My latest one is this vegan ramen, and my goal with each cookbook is to try out at least 5 recipes, right? So like sometimes you buy a book and it just sits on the shelf. I got another one recently, which is sort of irreverent. This one's from Thug Kitchen. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's called Bad Manners. There's a lot of F-bombs in that book. So Kyle and I are both from OpFocus. We're a consulting firm working across the US and Canada with SaaS companies to optimize their revenue operations. So we've been in the Salesforce space since 2006. All right, so if you haven't joined us before in the Dashboard Dojo, the whole idea behind this, I lived in Japan for a number of years as a younger person and loved it, had a wonderful experience, actually got to see some really fantastic dojos for different disciplines. This idea of a dojo is just a place to learn the way. So it seems sort of fitting. I remember, you might have heard me say the story before, meeting a guy who was older in life, and he shared that when he was competing in kendo, he would do 1,000 swipes a day to practice 1,000 swipes of that bamboo pole. But this idea of let's just practice, let's learn together. This is the idea behind the Dashboard Dojo. Before we move on, I do want to point out that we have lots of recordings now. So we've been working in the dojo for about 1.5 years now. I've also thrown in other recordings from different events that I've spoken at. And that's just at dashboarddojo.com. If you click on the recordings link, there's a lot of stuff there. So today, let's talk about sales reporting. So, I sort of have this goal of talking about the pipeline and talking about forecasting, and we're going to get there. But I found as I was prepping for today that there's so many interesting topics and tools that we all need to know about to help us get there with sales reporting. So we'll talk about what do we need for sales reporting. We'll talk about the standard opportunity report types. Some of them are really useful. Some of them we don't try, but they have some useful stuff. And then there are others that are less useful. Talking about useful stuff, I want to cover dynamic dashboards quickly, dashboard filters, trending, and embedded analytics. We have recordings for most of these topics on other dojos, but I want to talk about them today because they really can add value to your sales reporting. We'll get into what's the definition of a pipeline, what is a pipeline. We'll get into forecasting similarly. Then I want to talk about something that Salesforce is not particularly good at, which is target versus actual. So it's sort of been this open wound for all these years. I think I'm in my 17th year working on the platform. And target versus actual just isn't, it's not quite there yet. And it's kind of critical because salespeople have targets, sales leaders have targets, and they get fired if they don't hit those targets. And it's just sort of a harsh, cold reality of this world of sales. They have upside if they do well, but there's a downside if they don't do well. We'd love to help give them more insights on how they're doing. So we'll talk about some of that. All right, so what do we need for sales reporting? Sorry for the busy slide, but I have a few topics here. The first and foremost, I think what's so incredibly important in sales reporting is having definitions. These definitions should not be hidden away on your laptop. They should actually be shared among the team, especially the leadership team. And it's critically important that every new executive that comes on to into your organization actually be shared that set of definitions. A lot of these words end up being used interchangeably, and it's amazing how many times I'll never forget earlier in OpFocus's life, sitting with a leadership team about an hour into this very heated meeting. I realized that people on the opposite sides of the table were using different words for the same thing. And it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy because it was this, it felt like a relationship dating intervention or something. Like, guys, could you just be nice to each other? Like, guys, could you just use the same definition when talking about stuff? So it sounds basic, but it's an important thing. And you may experience this in your own organizations, that things like bookings and revenue and forecast, they're either mysterious or they're sort of blended together, but we should have good, crisp, clear definitions within the organization to be functional. So we also should be aware of key fields. Another early Salesforce or OpFocus client was a large semiconductor company with hundreds and hundreds of reps, at least 500 around the world. And they had hundreds and hundreds of fields on their opportunity layout. But at the end of the day, you really only need 4 or 5 to run the business. And these are things like, who owns the deal? What's the stage of the deal? What's the close date that the sales rep is saying? What's the amount of the deal? We might also throw in a field called forecast category into the mix, which is the rep's commitment to that deal coming in for that dollar amount and by that date. So I'd say at the most fundamental level, you can have as many fields on an opportunity that supports your sales process or your fundraising efforts. But at the core, there's just a few fields to really run the business. Now, to do more reporting, more analysis, I'd probably add in a few other fields. So this might be like, the type field, which out of the box has like new business versus existing business. Some of our leadership teams, and especially the boards, want to know, how many new logos did you add? How many new donors did you add this year? And that type field can help us out. We might also use custom fields like region. I've sort of been a little down on the percentage field for years. I think, it's too wishy-washy in a sense. Sales reps just sort of, put their finger in the air and so, yeah, it's going to come in, but there's no real qualitative sort of reasoning behind it. We're going to see with this definition of the stage that we can auto assign, and this is default behavior, we can assign default probabilities for each stage. But anyway, another thing that might be important to us if we start using opportunity products would be, which products. So we might have an opportunity that has 10 different products on it. We may want to forecast or have a pipeline showing just one of those, and we can take advantage of the opportunity products report type to do that. Other things you might be interested in might be things like billing country, the industry, the account region, and other fields again on your account. What's really nice is that accounts is joined at the hip with opportunities. You basically can't report on opportunities without the account data. I mean, actually, no, there's a way you could do it if you created a custom report type, but using the out-of-the-box report types, if you report on opportunities, you get the account data as well, and that can help us with our reporting for sales. So when we talk about the sales process, we talk about things like the pipeline. At the core is what's in the screenshot here, which is your opportunity stages. So Salesforce has a set of them out of the box. I've never seen anyone use the out of the box stages because every organization is different. We worked with a luxury air charter service many years ago, and I think they had 5 stages. We worked with a manufacturer that sold into the military, and I think they had 25 stages. And both of those were crisp and clean, very, very concise sales processes and very appropriate for their businesses. So we can see here this opportunity stage field. And this is one of those conversations, if you have a new head of sales and she comes on board, you might actually want to review this with her to just say, is this in line with the sales methodology that you want for this business? There are probably 1,000 different sales methodologies out there. You might have heard things like the challenger sale or solution selling or spin selling. There's many of them at Miller Hyman. There's many of them out there. What I think we've seen over the years at OpFocus is that heads of sales come in, or head of sales ops comes in and sort of has some amalgam of one or two sales methodologies. But this is something that, I think if you can lock the door, shut off the lights, just get some folks in a room to focus, leave their cell phones outside the room, just focus on these stage names and the stage definitions. So let's look in the system where I'm talking about. So if you're a sysadmin, or even if you're not a sysadmin, you can actually go look at this. If you go under Setup, Object Manager, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. Setup, Object Manager, and go to the Opportunity Object, Fields and Relationships. And if I just scroll down here and look at the stage field. So what we see here are the definitions for the opportunity stages. So this is the out-of-the-box set. We have prospecting, qualification, needs analysis, and so on. And these columns here are important. So the name itself is important. I've actually seen a head of sales and a head of marketing get into a heated battle over a stage. One of them wanted to use the word nurturing, and one of them didn't want to use the word nurturing, and it was funny. This column for what type is it open or closed? That's going to drive a field, a system generated formula field that we can take advantage of to say, is this an open opportunity? We have the default probability. We also have a default forecast category. So even if you don't use the full-on forecast module, the customizable forecasting, you can still take advantage of this field called forecast category. And this is essentially the rep's commitment to the date and the dollar amount. Now, I'm someone that doesn't really like to have forecast categories foisted upon the salesperson. So if the salesperson moved an opportunity to negotiation review, it's automatically going to change the forecast category to commit. I personally might like to see these forecast categories all be pipeline until it's closed or omitted, just so that we don't have any unintended commits in our pipeline. The other way you could do it is use the defaults, but teach the reps to actually update them so that they're meaningful. Why don't we go ahead and add a new opportunity stage here? I'm going to add one called dead. Over the years, we've seen that a lot of salespeople don't like to say that they lost something because they're not a loser, but they're okay with saying that something died. It just died on its own. It had nothing to do with my sales skills. So what we'll do here is again, we're under Setup, Object Manager. We're in the Opportunity Object, Fields and Relationships. So I'm a sysadmin, and what I can do is change the stages, and it's pretty straightforward. So to add a new stage, we're going to give it a name. We're going to define whether it's open, won, or lost. This is really important. So I'm going to say it's lost. The rep doesn't know that we're saying it's lost, but it's lost. We're going to give it a probability of 0, and we're going to leave it as omitted. Now, there is a description field here. I would say nobody can see it except really admins. So this isn't a useful place to define your sales process. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the sales process called sales process. And I'm going to click save. Now, you do have a few other tools in here. You can reorder them. That just automatically got dropped at the bottom, which is what I wanted. You can also replace them. You have the ability to delete them. You have the ability to deactivate them. Just to point out, if you choose to deactivate old values, they are still usable in reporting. They're still usable in pick lists and filters, but not selectable on a current opportunity going forward. If you choose to delete them and you're essentially getting rid of it, it's no longer reportable in that same way. But let's say that I wanted to get rid of perception analysis because I think that's sort of a silly stage. I could go ahead and just click and deactivate, are you sure? And this will no longer be usable going forward. So what do I need to do? Reload the page probably. Did I not do that correctly? Are you sure? Oh, okay. So it looks like it did it, but it just didn't update the page. All right, well, that's fun. I love breaking things. So let's go back to Object Manager. We'll just finish out this. We'll keep going on our topics. All right, so back under opportunity stage. There it is. Okay, so it's all the way down here at the bottom of the screen. Perception analysis is now inactive. So a sales rep can't essentially choose that anymore. So when you have a new head of sales come in, you very well likely may, within the next short period of time, be asked to update the sales stages. This is how you do it. It's pretty straightforward. Before you do any updates like this, please just make a copy of all the opportunity data so you can fix it if you make a mistake. So don't forget to back up. All right. So what else do we need for sales reporting? We need clean, repeatable sales process. So it starts with your stages, having good, crisp, clear names. I would go so far as to say your stages should be milestone driven so that everybody knows at the qualification stage, this, and this is done. At the needs analysis stage, this, and this gets done. So milestone driven sales stages is a valuable thing. You want buy-in from management. This doesn't go anywhere if management doesn't care. You also want to try to instill a weekly ritual from your sales reps to make the updates, right? So we can create all the greatest reporting in the world, but if there isn't a ritual and there isn't a clean process, it's sort of meaningless. And that weekly ritual could be driven by list views, where a sales rep can do inline editing and make the changes for their pipeline right in the list view. And you're basically just asking them to update the key fields, right? So did the stage change? Is the close date changed? Is the amount changed? And so on. So when we're doing sales reporting, there are a handful of out-of-the-box report types, and I just want to talk about a few of them. Most of the time, I'm just using what I have next to number 1 here, just the plain old opportunities. So I'll use that for the pipeline. I'll use it for a basic forecast. And when I say forecast here, I'm not talking about the forecast module. I'm just saying, we'll talk about the definition of forecast in a little bit, but just for a pipeline and a basic forecast, this is fine. I can do trending on the created date of the opportunities. I could do trending on the close dates. I can do win-loss analysis. There's a bunch of analysis that I can do just using number 1. With number 2, opportunities with products, this is a left outer join that has opportunities with or without products. So if your organization uses products and price books, and at some point you're expecting reps to put them into the associate them with opportunities, then this could be valuable to you. A lot of organizations, let's say that they sell hardware, software, and training and warranties, they may want to do a report on the forecast for just hardware, and you could use opportunities with products to do that. You can also do product family reporting, which is essentially a categorization of all the individual products. You're basically categorizing them into groups called families. So Almas has a question here. Can we create dummy account owner other than SF user and assign it as the opportunity owner? I'm trying to think of why we would want to create a dummy account owner. Yes. And something else for Almas, the owner of an opportunity does not have to be the same person as the owner of the account. So just to point that out, right? They're not joined at the hip. But you could have different owners. They could be the same owners. I don't know why you'd want to create a dummy owner, but you could. Great. So a third one here that I think a lot of us don't actually dig into is opportunity history. So this is an out-of-the-box report type that's available to you. What Salesforce does is it auto tracks this handful of key fields. So basically your close date, your stage, your forecast category, your amount, maybe probability. Any changes to any of those get tracked by this opportunity history, and there's a report type available to you. It's giving you the ability to see what was the from stage and what's the to stage. You can see stage changes. You can see the duration of the current stage, like how long has it been in the stage. You can see specific fields for the forecast from and to. What's also cool about this, and I'll show an example of it, you can combine historical filters with this. So you could say, you know, for things that were qualified last week, well, we could say for things that were qualified, you know, where are they now? Something like that. The last value is qualified. Where is it now? There's some interesting combinations you can do with this opportunity history. The fourth one is an out-of-the-box one called opportunity trends. This has been in Salesforce as long as I've used it, so almost 17 years. And what Salesforce does is it takes a snapshot on the first day of every month, and it makes that available to you of these key fields. And we can, basically, group and report, and we could create something to say, what was the stage of all of our open opportunities on that first day of each month. So there's an as of date that we can take advantage of. I want to point out one more thing before we move on. With each one of these standard report types, I want you to actually put your Indiana Jones hat on for a moment and actually explore the report type. So let me get rid of this. So if I'm in choosing the report type, we actually have a brand new report type selector coming out. I didn't get it turned on in this org in time, unfortunately. I have an open case, but with Spring 22, there's a brand new way of choosing the report type. Just to throw it out there, it's a beta feature. But if I go ahead and select a report type, I'm going to choose opportunity history just as the example. But for each one of these, if you're using a report type for the first time, what I want you to do is take advantage of the Field Explorer up here in the top left and actually look through and see what Salesforce gives us, because there's more information than you'd realize. There are a whole bunch of system-generated fields. Let me make this a little bigger for you. So we have the from stage, the to stage, stage change, stage duration, the amount, the forecast category change from to. There are all these interesting fields that are available. Sometimes a field is available to be put on the report. Sometimes it's available as a filter, sometimes both. But for each report type of the standard report types, I would actually take a peek. A few that I'm going to talk about that I really like are closed and won. And if I go to the filters here and I add one for, well, I probably wouldn't do it on this report, but I could say closed equals false. And that's a really nice way to say, give me all the open opportunities, to do closed equals false. So these are generated by, remember we looked at the stages and that open, closed, and closed lost definition of the stages. That's what drives these checkboxes for closed and won. There's something similar on cases, just to throw it out there, that there are system generated formulas essentially that you can use in your reporting. All right, so someone asked, are opportunity reports affected by the access status of the opportunity being private? Oh, that's such a great question. Do you know, private has been part of opportunities all these 17 years that I've worked on the platform, and I've actually never seen it used. So I don't know the answer to that, but why don't I'll take a look this afternoon and just see what that is actually intended for. I'm sure it's probably one of the original features on the platform, but I haven't seen anyone use it in all these years. I'd love to have you throw in the chat what your use case is if you have it. So an example of opportunity history is, looking at what stage did deals die. So this is kind of an interesting thing. This is an example from the beginning of COVID where, before COVID, we got all the way down to negotiation and our deals would die sort of later in the sales process. But right after COVID, there was a real big change where deals just died at the qualification phase. Nobody had budget. The threshold to spend money dropped so low that deals didn't go very far in the pipeline. Well, I could do this by using the opportunity history report type. And what I did is I grouped the rows by the from stage, and this is the from stage here. These are two of the same report, just time bound by before March 12th, probably, and after March 12th, something like that, whenever the world locked down. And then you can see here in the filters that I included all opportunities of all time, and then bound it by the last stage change was this quarter, that the stage changed, and that the current stage is closed lost. So this is how I set up this particular one. I also used a formula to come up with the percentages and show them on the chart, just one extra little detail. But there are some really interesting ways we can look at the data in our system. We could do the same thing for fundraising, right? So if we're working in it for a nonprofit and we're looking to analyze, gift giving or grants that we're applying for, we can, show them the same exact way. So some other useful stuff for sales reporting. If many of us do account-based marketing and we've used target accounts. So the idea of a target account would be like this screenshot over on the right. Laura Garza, she's a sales rep. She's one of our top reps, and she has 10 target accounts. Well, we might want to look at what for her 10 target accounts, like what's going on in those 10 target accounts. And what we have here is we can see all 10 target accounts and their open pipeline, whether or not there is any open pipeline. So the only way to do this is to use a custom report type. So custom report types is super useful. We have at least one dojo on this topic where we did a very similar example. But basically, you create a custom report type called accounts with or without opportunities, and that's the key. That there's essentially a left outer join that lets you see all accounts. And if there are opportunities, great, show me those. This is also taking advantage of a checkbox on the account to say, she might own 100 accounts, but only 10 are her targets. So that's how I'd achieve that. A couple of other useful things there are a number of ways to do date stamping, and date stamping allows us to measure the velocity of deals. You may have heard from a sales leader, I'd really like to see the velocity of deals going stage to stage through our pipeline. A lot of more sophisticated reporting tools will just give you that out of the box. Well, with Salesforce, what we do is we do a little bit of plumbing, and I've got a bit.ly link here with an old example. That old example is still usable, but it's set up with Process Builder. In the year 2022, we should really use Flow for that instead of Process Builder, just to point that caveat out. I mentioned the system-generated fields. There's a whole bunch of them, and they're very useful, such as won or closed. There's one for close date number 2. I think that predates formulas in Salesforce. On opportunity reports, we see age, stage duration. There are others in there. These are just little gimmies to help you with your sales reporting. So when I create a report showing open pipeline, I will only ever say closed equals false, or on the opportunity report, just say show me open. I won't mess around with stage equals qualification, prospecting, whatever. I won't do that because 6 months later, a new head of sales comes on board. She wants to change the sales methodology. Well, then you have to go back to all the old reports and update the filters. So to avoid that total nightmare, you can just take advantage of these out of the box. So closed means closed won or closed lost. If we're saying that's false, that means it's open. So that's a useful filter off of one of these system generated fields. So I haven't kept my eyes on the chat. So Kyle, we'll do the poll in just a second. Deluxe report types, if you haven't seen these before, I'll throw this in the chat. So Evan Ponter, who's here in the US, he's down in the Baltimore area, has done a lot of speaking, thinking, and writing on this concept of deluxe report types. And this can give you a new level of visibility. And it's essentially, you're creating something at a low level. You're creating a custom report type, let's say on opportunities, and it allows you to reach up and pull fields in, like, is the sales rep left-handed or right-handed? Do they like coffee in the morning? Okay, I'm joking, but like, what's their mobile phone number? You can pull in other related fields of objects above the opportunity. So I'll let you read this and think about how you might use it, but it's incredibly powerful. We talked about this in that old session, the dojo session on custom report types. All right, so we'll wrap out our useful stuff by just mentioning 2 more things. Dynamic dashboards, super useful in sales reporting. In Enterprise Edition, you can have 5 of them. These are great for managers. You need to either update the manager's profile or create a permission set to allow them to take advantage of these. But you can see here what it does on a dashboard is it just adds a change link to the right. So if I'm the sales manager, and I look at this, it's going to show me, for me, but I can change it and I can look at one of my sales reps and it'll rerun all the things on that dashboard. So in Enterprise Edition, you can have 5 of them. Unlimited Edition, I believe you can have 10. Another useful thing is date ranges on dashboard filters. So, if you have a great dashboard out there with sales analysis, you might consider just adding a filter on, and it's pretty straightforward. And specifically with dates, we can use dynamic ranges. And I could say, let me look at this open pipeline information this month or this quarter. So just to show you that one in action, where is my play dashboard here? So I have a dashboard. These all just happen to actually be the exact same report. I'm just looking at the same report and a bunch of different visualizations. This is how I play. And I added a filter onto this dashboard on the close date. And I basically used dynamic ranges to say equals this month equals this quarter. It's very easy to add a filter to a report. Why don't we go ahead and we'll add one more filter value just to show you what that's like. So I'm looking at this dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and edit the dashboard. And I'm going to go over to my filter. And there's a pencil above the filter. If I edit that filter, I can see that I relabeled this to time frame. It's really based on the close date, but I just gave it a display name of time frame. And why don't we do next year? So the default is that the close date will let you do a calendar date. That's not what I want. I want a relative date. And there's a nice file in help on relative dates. There's a whole list of them. There's like 50 of them now, probably even more than that. And what I can do is something like next year. And it doesn't have to be capitalized. I just think it looks nice. So now I've just updated this, and it's as easy to add a filter as to update it. That was pretty easy, right? I'll save it. We'll take a look at it. And now I can run this, and there's probably no data for next year. This will just wipe clean. It's a bunch of zeros, but now I can run it again for this month, and we'll see what the data looks like. So this is a really nice way to get a little bit more out of your dashboards. Last useful stuff before we talk about pipeline and forecast is trending. We did a whole session on trending January 26th of the last session on trending. There are a few different trending tools within Salesforce. A feature that just requires a checkbox to turn on is historical trending. You can see things like, did it change, and was it a positive change or a negative change? You can show negative changes in red and positive changes in green, stuff like that. That's a feature called historical trending. Very, very easy to use. It's not new. It's at least a decade old. Also in that last session, we talked about reporting snapshots. In fact, the last session was just reporting snapshots. We could do something like this, just showing the week by week by week, what did our open pipeline look like? So these are 2 trending options. I did want to point out one other one, which is just very simple trending, no setup required. You can just do this in your business, create a report on all of your closed won opportunities, and then group it twice by close date. So the first time would be just grouping it by close date. The second time by this system generated formula field called close date 2, which is very useful for exactly this. And then the outer one, the one for close date, we group it by calendar month and year. And then the inner one, this close date 2, we group it by calendar year. And that produces something like this, where you can start to see the seasonality. So what do I see here? 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Each of these 5 years is repeated over and over for every month. And I can start to see, how do we typically do in this particular month? And this can be really helpful for things like, how many opportunities do we typically create a month? How many opportunities do we typically close a month? What's the amount of our closed opportunities? This is a very, very simple trending, no setup required. And this can help you identify seasonality in your business, like which months aren't good. You could do it with quarters as well. All right. So last topic would be, before pipeline and forecast, is embedded analytics. We did on January 12th, we did a session on this. And once you build great dashboards and reports that have charts, we can embed them into the pages. So here's an example on the right of I log into Salesforce and my homepage shows me the dashboard that helps me do my job better. So I can just embed a dashboard right into the homepage, and it's as easy as creating a dashboard and then editing the homepage, dragging the component onto the page and saying which dashboard should be there. That's it. There's really not a lot to it. Again, we have the Dojo recording on the 12th for that. Thank you, Kyle. All right. So now to sort of what I think is sort of the main course. Before we do this, Kyle, could you put the poll up, please? So I'm curious for folks, do you have clear definitions for what is pipeline and forecast in your organization? Be very curious what you guys all say. Okay, always good to see yes. All right, we have a good number, half right now, using the words interchangeably. No, we use different words, and that might be just in a different business. You're in real estate, you're in a nonprofit, et cetera. And I'm glad that none of you have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's okay if you say it too. Great. Why don't we go ahead and end that, Kyle? And it looks like, yes, 36%, 50% have used the words interchangeably. Okay, so I want to define these two things and give you at least a starting point for that 50% of you that that uses the words interchangeably. So, I went out just looking around on the web, surfing the web, and look for definitions of the word pipeline. Well, one that popped out is a sales pipeline outlines every step of your sales process from a potential customer's first interaction with your company to the final closing of a deal. Right, so that's really what this is here, the funnel here you can see. And Salesforce added the funnel chart precisely because heads of sales love to see a funnel. They just love seeing it look like this. When I think of the word pipeline, I'm thinking, yes, of the stages, but I'm more thinking about what's open, because in my system, I have a bunch of stuff that we won in the past, hooray, and a bunch of stuff that we lost in the past, boo-hoo. And a bunch of deals that died, but I have stuff that's open. And I think of that, whatever's open in my system, I think of that as the pipeline, and it's not time bound. So we could have renewal deals a year from now or 2 years from now that are open, and that's still part of the pipeline. Like, what's our pipeline? So I think of it as all open deals, and yes, I'll pay homage to things like the set of the sales process, but I sort of take the sales process as a given that we're going to have stages, because we're using a tool like Salesforce. Now, to look at all the open deals, all I need to do when I create a report is change the filters. So instead of my opportunities, make it all opportunities. Instead of this quarter, the current fiscal quarter, change it to all time. And then that opportunity status, changing it to open. This is just going to open my eyes to what is open. What are the open opportunities in my system? So we can see an example of this from this dashboard pack. And just so that I don't forget, there is a free dashboard pack on the App Exchange that you can download and use as a starter set in your Salesforce org. So if you go to appexchange.com, this came out in 2019. It was built for Lightning. I think there are some things that you could do better on it, but it has 4 different dashboards and a bunch of source reports. And if you're looking for just anything to impress your boss, you might start with that and you can make changes to it. So it's called Pre-Configured Sales Cloud Dashboards. And just to show you this, this is what it looks like in the App Exchange. And it's got some nice examples here. So key metrics. And this is one way to get started, and to actually just pick and choose the things that you like, and you can easily save as to essentially clone, and then make your changes to these starter examples. So when I'm thinking of the pipeline, there's a bunch of stuff that I want to do with a pipeline. So if I was walking in the door of your organization, I'd probably do a few different looks of, like a bird's eye view of the pipeline. Give me all the open deals, grouped by owner and stage, just like let me see them. And I might even do something like add conditional formatting, as you can see here, to make certain anomalies pop out. Like I can tell Evelyn's in trouble, right? So either Evelyn is crushing her number, or she's probably going to get fired soon because she has nothing at the lower part of her sales pipeline. The last stages, she has nothing that's really likely to close. She's not going to make her number. And how did I find that out? Well, I created this report grouped by owner, grouping the rows and grouping the columns by stage. This is called a matrix report. And then I added conditional formatting. When you go to add conditional formatting, it shows 3 colors initially, 3 thresholds, and you can delete one of them and you can actually hide the color, just use the color that has the red slash through it for the second one. And sometimes the conditional formatting is just too busy looking. It's kind of nice to just show anomalies. And in this case, showing them red. I think I have this example open in my work here. That's not it. You know what? I don't think I have it open. So let's go find this open pipe by rep and stage. Okay, so here's that example here. And again, this is just a very simple report of all of our open pipeline grouped twice by owner and stage to make a matrix report. And I just want to show you, like, if you create this once, why don't we just keep using it? Like, instead of opportunity owner, let's do it by country. Let's look at billing country. And one little trick is to add the new group before you delete the old group. Otherwise, it sort of blows it up. So I'm adding the new group billing country to group rows, and then I'm going to delete the opportunity owner, and then it just sort of sits in its place. Well, when I run this, the numbers are probably, they're going to have a different meaning for at the country level than for the sales rep level. I'll probably want to go back and adjust my conditional formatting. And maybe I save that and then I create another one by industry. And you could just keep going and doing different types of analysis on this same set of data. Again, I would probably change the conditional formatting. But it's just sort of a nice way to just dig in on your open pipeline and just see what's out there and understand where are our strengths. All right, so there's other types of pipeline analysis that we can do. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in the next session, where we'll use formulas to do analysis of sales reporting. And I think that's going to be fun. But just to take a step toward forecasting. So sales forecasting is a process that allows a business to estimate future sales revenue for a specific time frame. So I've underlined specific time frame because that's an important concept in forecasting. These are typically based on historical data plus your current pipeline and potentially external data sources that impact things like seasonality. I remember we worked with a company that, for whatever reason, the fall and the spring were terrible for them. It was always the summer and the winter. And we actually took their sales estimates, and anything that was in the fall or the spring, we discounted it, not actually offering a discount, but we said it's likely to be lower because of the seasonality. And we use formulas to do that. But it's interesting, there are a couple of things with forecasting, but at the core, this is something that's time bound, and it might include open data plus closed opportunities, closed won opportunities as well. So every one of your organizations forecasts in some way. This is how businesses run. This is how they operate. Salesforce has a module called Customizable Forecasting that I'll show in a minute. I don't know that it's ever been used by more than about 2% of Salesforce customers. At OpFocus, we use it. I actually like it. I don't think it solves every use case. However, it does solve a number of use cases. So I'll talk about that in a minute. For right now, let's just talk about plain old forecasting. Forget about the forecast module. So every organization forecasts. And to do this, it just requires a handful of fields. It also requires clear expectations and good habits. I just went to the dentist yesterday. I feel like the good habits thing, they tell me, you really ought to floss once in a while. So it's kind of like that. You're going to have to floss your forecast, right? And one key piece to this in Salesforce anyway is using a field called forecast category. Interestingly, the way that Salesforce built this, only the sales rep can update that field. And it's essentially their commitment to the date and the dollar amount on that opportunity. So, they have all these other fields of the sales methodology. Then they have a core set of fields like the stage, the close date, the amount, et cetera. And then there's this thing called the forecast category. Are you going to bring in the deal this quarter or not, essentially? And we want to actually, we want to analyze our reps for how good they are at doing this, at actually forecasting and committing what they commit or not. And there should almost be penalties for not getting it right, because it helps the business to run itself if people do this particular thing well. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not really a fan of the default forecast categories. So there's pipeline, best case, and commit. And it wouldn't bother me at all to have them all be pipeline. And then if a rep feels, that it's worthy, to actually move it to commit. And then we know that those are real numbers. But that's just one thought. So with forecasting, you have a set period. You typically will include one and open ops. You can see here on a dashboard, we have my forecast this month and my forecast next month. Now, next month wouldn't include closed, but this month includes closed, and we have some deals in best case and pipeline, and that totals 4 million. And next month we have deals in commit, best case, and pipeline, and we can see a total down there as well. So I like this view. Even if you run your business quarterly, it's really nice to have reps putting up a number monthly. Or if you run your business monthly, you might even have my forecast this week, my forecast next week, and actually have the reps aware of what they're saying to your business around what they're committing. So this is just an example of forecasting. I think I might have an example of this. Okay, so I've got a sales dashboard here. This is a dynamic dashboard. I have the change link. I've changed it to Laura. And we might see, just for Laura, when she logs in, this could be on our homepage if you wanted, my one ops this month, my one ops this year, something like that. She might have leads that she's tracking. She might see her opportunity funnel of all of her open deals. And then what is she forecasting this month and what is she forecasting next month? Just as an example of this might be some basic data. There's a little bit of like, you want the rep to know that you're watching. You want the rep to know, and you might even add things like how many activities have they logged and what are their upcoming meetings and things like that. You might even throw in here as well. All right, so that's forecasting. There is the feature called Customizable Forecasting. I mentioned that OpFocus, we use this feature. One reason why I like it, it's one of the only ways in Salesforce to do forecast versus actual. All right, so my mouse just stopped working. Let's keep going. Look at that. Isn't that fun? So you can see here that we've got a quota, and right next to it, we can see close data. How in the world did that happen? All right, plan B. My screen will flicker, but we'll be okay. Okay. Nope. Oh, okay. I've got multiple. Okay, that's the problem. I have a screenshot with a cursor in there. I fooled myself. Oh, that's great. Okay, so you can see here, I've loaded quota numbers. This is one of the features. You don't have to use quotas when you use forecasting, but you can. And I really like this for this whole concept of target versus actual and holding reps accountable. And then I can see what each rep is closed, what each rep is committing, what their best case is, what their open pipeline is. Each one of these things can be clicked on. And when you click on it, that list will appear down at the bottom. And you have a couple of other things that you can do. You can set the time frame for this and whatnot. When you use customizable forecasting, it requires setup. You need to enable and then adjust a bunch of settings. You make a decision, are you forecasting units or dollar amounts? You need to set up your users as forecasting users. So Bob and Bruce and Chris, these people have all these users have been set up with a checkbox on their user record to allow forecasting. Then you want to make sure that your role hierarchy makes sense, because forecasting takes advantage of that. And it allows each level in your sales hierarchy to put a spin, to make their own commitment based on the deals of the people below them. So it's really kind of cool how this is set up. It's actually not hard to set up. I think it's pretty powerful, and you can actually report on this data as well. So it requires a handful of fields, and probably more importantly, it requires clear expectations and good habits. And again, this forecast category field is used to commit. You're asking the rep to commit to the date and the dollar amount. So that's customizable forecasting. It'd be interesting to hear if anybody uses this. I'd love to hear in chat if you use customizable forecasting. So our last topic for today is target versus actual. And I really wish that Salesforce did a better job with this. We do have a feature that's just gone GA, generally available in spring 22, which is the dynamic gauges. And you can see here on the left, I have a standard gauge, and on the right, I have a dynamic gauge. And you go, wait a minute, those look pretty similar. And they are pretty similar, except where the target is coming from. So this 3.7 million is coming. You can actually tell the difference between a dynamic gauge. It basically, the footer on a standard gauge is whatever you want it to be, and the footer on a dynamic gauge is written to sum of amount compared to target amount, and it has the word target in there a couple times. So under the hood, you basically, when you create a gas gauge on a dashboard, you're saying, is it standard? The standard is the default, by the way, or is it dynamic? And if you choose dynamic, you have to set which record in the system are you going to get the target from. So I created a custom object called target. I created targets for Julia Chavez and other sales reps, and then I hard coded them into these gas gauges. It's still a little clumsy. The standard gas gauges, you have to hard code the numbers directly into the gas gauge. With dynamic, you're pulling it from a record, but you still have to update the records. So maybe that's easier than it used to be. But that's one way to do target versus actual. Another way is to take advantage of the forecasting quota object. So this object is available if you enable forecasting. So you don't even have to use forecasting, but if you enable forecasting, you can take advantage of the quotas. So you would need to enable the users, each user, there's a checkbox to allow forecasting, and then you could actually load quotas for them. So if you did that and you created a custom report type on forecasting quotas, you could do something like this over on the right. I'm sorry for the big bunch of goose eggs here. This is actually something we had in the OpFocus system, and I don't have a quota anymore, and I don't sell anymore. So my quota is 0 and my bookings is 0. But if we looked at this last year or the year before, we could see my quota this month, and right next to it, my bookings this month, my quota this year, my bookings this year, my quota this year, my quota this quarter, etc. So the next evolution of this, in my mind, is something that I'll try to set up for our next dojo session, where I'll use a formula to basically show the percentage of attainment. I'll just see if I can pull that off. I think there's a way to do it if I throw these on to, I need some custom formula fields. I think I can put it onto a joined report, and I think I can figure it out. But stay tuned for that. All right, so for a recap, we talked about what do we need for sales reporting. There's a handful of fields. There's a whole bunch of features that are useful to you related to sales reporting. I talked about clear definitions of what is, what's your pipeline. I would go so far as to say what's a booking, what's revenue, because these are very different concepts. What's your forecast? And just making sure that everybody in the organization agrees to what these definitions are before you ever try to build it in the system. We talked about the opportunity report types that come standard. You can also create custom report types. We talked about a bunch of useful stuff. We talked a little bit about pipeline analysis and forecasting, and then target versus actual. Just to throw it out there, one other screenshot I thought to throw in here. This is a joined report. And a joined report lets you put blocks of up to 5 reports side by side into one report. So if you haven't played with join reports, we actually have a video on the Dashboard Dojo recordings about that. But here's one example of it. I'm looking at all of my my won opportunities by account. So this is my sales history for this account. And right next to it, I have another report block showing all the open opportunities. And then next to that, I have another report block showing open priority one cases. And I can tell you for sure that this United Oil and Gas, I'm going to focus on their cases. They're our biggest customer by far. They have the biggest amount of open deals, and they have 2 priority one cases. So we should go fix those. So that's a joined report. I think we did an entire session in the dojo on joined reports as well. All right, so looks like Sylvia has a question. Is there a report or historical tracking where you can see the entire history log of a particular opportunity record? See state changes, date stamps, value changes, chatter comments, etc. So you would need to, so Sylvia, great question. You would need to turn on opportunity history tracking. So behind the scenes, if you go under setup, object manager, opportunities, fields and relationships, I've gone kind of quickly, but you're under the object manager, fields and relationships, and there's a button over here on the right to set history tracking. This lets you track up to 20 fields on this object. That introduces a new report report type called opportunity history. Actually, I think it's different on this one object. Let's create another report and I'll tell you exactly what it's called. It's different on this one object. It's called opportunity field history. So you have to turn it on first. You need some time to go by, but you choose which fields that it's enabled for. We're back at it tomorrow. Kyle and I are hosting a panel talking about preparing for your next board meeting. This crew is awesome. So I've known Toby and Corey for years, and we work with Anna as well. They all have experience presenting to the board, and this is like another level of what you do with your reports to actually get up in front of the board and talk about them. So if you want to join us tomorrow, that's right on the OpFocus site. I think Kyle's put it into the chat. I've got 2 classes coming up. I'll be teaching next week, updated for spring 22, a 5-day Salesforce admin class. Also, March 1st and 2nd, I'll be teaching a 2-day hands-on reporting workshop. So I'd love to have you join us. And we have upcoming dojo sessions, February 23rd. My name is David Carnes. I teach OpFocus. Oh, that's too funny. Form configure. Gotta stop clicking on links. February 23rd in the dojo, we're gonna dig more into sales reporting, but use formulas to do things like opportunity score, driven expected amounts, conversion ratios, etc. Then we've got a few more set up for the spring. So it looks like we just have a minute. I'll see if there are other questions in the chat. I don't know if there are any other questions. Did you see any other questions, Kyle?
No, I think you got to all of them, I believe.
Okay. Well, guys, thanks for staying with us today, and hope to see you in the next dojo on February 23rd. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.